Today, we are very lucky to have an incredible woman joining us who is a healer and leadership coach. She has an unapologetic voice in the world of business, personal growth, and emotional resilience. She shares her journey of building a business while navigating the shadows of unresolved trauma, burnout, and emotional blind spots. Drawing from her own healing and professional insights, she equips leaders and entrepreneurs with the tools to turn pain into power and lead from a place of authenticity, clarity, and courage. If you've ever wondered how healing intersects with high performance leadership, this conversation is your roadmap. Denise, we are so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Natasha, for having me.
So, Denise, how did you develop such an authentic voice and the courage to be so just unapologetic?
Well, what is authenticity? We hear people buzzing those words around authenticity. And I think for a lot of us, we think it's being able to twirl around on an IG reel or being able to say something flippant at a dinner conversation. And we think, oh, that's so bold. That must be authentic. But authentic, that's not it. That's sometimes being crass and arrogant. But authenticity, in my personal opinion, is to be able to let the outside see what's going on inside of you and not be worried of the consequences.
So you do that so beautifully, and you are not like trapped by your past in any way, and you have, really gone through the healing journey. So were you always so tapped in like this, or was it a process?
Well, that's a great question, Natasha. And to the thought is, have I gone through it? Have I healed completely through it? And the absolute answer is absolutely no. For the people who are listening, watching, however you're consuming, I'm an incest survivor. I've had over 10 years of alcoholism. I'm a sex addict survivor. I've gone through a lot. And to sit here and say, Natasha, for anyone who's listening, oh, I'm fine. No biggie. Just a little blip on the radar of my life. Like, that's ridiculous. I have flashbacks of doing stuff that should have put me in jail, that should have gotten me in rehab facilities, that should have wrecked my whole ability to earn money. I am always cognizant of that, Natasha. I think everyone who has gone through stuff is aware that we can't do a blank slate. But what we can do is put it in perspective. Okay, my alcoholism, my sex addiction has informed me to understand that not everyone else has had rosy lives. Maybe I'm not as special compared to other people. Maybe there's some stuff that I created that caused the addiction to begin with. And so when you're tapping into those conversations with yourself, it's not a leapfrog to have a conversation with other people about those issues. Is it wildly uncomfortable? Yeah, it is. But just like everything, like riding a bike, driving a car, it gets better with practice.
So Denise, you said something that was so brave. You were like, my alcoholism is something that you kind of had, in retrospect, now looking at it, you seem to feel like you had control over that. Like you made the choices you're not blaming the outside world. You're taking responsibility. Was that a way that you've always viewed life, or has this come through your journey?
So here's the thing, right? When I talk about my alcoholism and all the crappy stuff that I've gone through, I'm not coming from this angle of I woke up, I felt bad one day, and I hit back a bottle of Jack Henny. That's not the sequence of of what happened. What happened was I had a lot of unprocessed hurt, pain, trauma. Nobody was around me that had the ability, understanding, or willingness to help me diffuse from that pain. And therefore, I chose coping mechanisms that were completely self-destructive. I owned that I took the drink. No one put it in my mouth. That's what I'm talking about. I owned that sequence of events. And that didn't take one morning waking up and hearing like the birds singing and like some godlike voice beaming into my head. Like it happened through peeling back layers of what I thought I was happening with me and the experience that impacted my perception of reality. And I just condensed a whole bunch of stuff in like 2 minutes. I understand that. But that's just kind of like, that's my TEDx talk for that.
Because it is, I mean, you do have, I mean, there's so much, and it's so brave of you. And I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you so much for being on the show and really sharing so beautifully and openly. There's so much that you could have looked outside of yourself, and you could have said, well, it's okay that I do this and I have these coping mechanisms that are self-destructive because I've had all this stuff happen to me in the past. Was there a time in your journey that you did have those thoughts? And if so, how did you transition to the way you think today?
I think we all have those thoughts. I think all of us, well, let's think about this way, Natasha. I don't know about you. I'm going to date myself when I say this. I kind of grew up watching Seinfeld. And there's
like, you're even a little, I think I'm a little older than you.
Okay, well, I watched it. I should have been watching it. I had no idea the context of it, but I sat alongside my relatives watching that. And like, think about why everyone loves Seinfeld. They were all assholes. Every single Jerry, Elaine, all of them, just getting into all these hijinks. And then there was complete like disbelief as the consequences. Like, I don't know they would react that way. Like, you didn't know? Well, that's kind of what happens when you're in the realms of addiction. I didn't know people were going to get mad at me. I didn't know I was going to have in trouble. I didn't know they were going to take away my car because I didn't pay my car payments on time. I didn't know my wife would leave me. There's all these things that happen when you're just under the fog of these coping mechanisms. And to answer the question, like, no, I didn't wake up one day going, oh man, I was an asshole for like decades. It was literally being able to strip away the shame, processing the grief, and realizing my own resilience, taking self-agency about who I am and the person I want to become, regardless of what went down in the past.
So how do you do that today? Like, for somebody who's, they are in the throes of it, they feel like they're trapped by their trauma, they can't get past it, maybe they're taking on unhealthy coping mechanisms. I want to show you are such an amazing light and a shining example to this. How did you move through that?
I took a course that was $69 online, and I read a Brene Brown book. No. That's what we want here. That's like, I know there's somebody right now listening, like, just tell me to read a Brene Brown book and download something on Pinterest. That's all I need. Honey, if it was that easy, Natasha wouldn't have this podcast and I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this, right? So the struggle is real. So here's the thing, right? Everybody who has an addiction or a hurt or hang up or whatever is dealt with. It primarily comes from a trauma. And a trauma is basically something that rocks your world, causes a disruption mentally, emotionally, physically. And on top of it, it creates belief systems that shame you. Like, for example, when I was in the midst of my sex addiction, the label that got put on me was I'm filthy. We're not filthy. We all make mistakes, right? We all have hurts and hangups and issues, but none of us are filthy, like gutter. I talk with so many women. Gosh, I remember talking with this one client of mine. She had 4 abortions. The last one, she literally self-induced, punching herself in the stomach. And she said, I'm a killer. When we have gone through so many situations and there's nobody sitting beside us and say, it not going to take away the hurt, the pain, or the consequences, but it's something that will help understand not just yourself, but have humanity for other people. That takes time to process. So the first thing, let's lay out all the cards. Let's talk about what happened really in completely unvarnished terms, but let's context it with love and compassion. Because for a lot of us, we can't even move to the healing without even having compassion. So if you're sitting there and you're listening or watching and you're thinking like, Denise, you don't know my story. Like, I don't. But I do know that making yourself feel like a pile of crap is not helping you. So that's number 1, right? Number 2 is, here's the thing about trauma that a lot of people don't understand. So everyone thinks that trauma is, we just sit there and we just talk, we head talk and say we're beautiful and affirmation. You put up your glow chart about all the wonderful things you do. And if you look at it long enough and do some NLP stuff, you'll feel better about yourself. When I say NLP, I'm talking about neuro-linguistic programming. There's a lot of coaches that do that stuff, whatever, but that's a different subject. The point I'm trying to make of all of this is that you think you could talk yourself out of it, but that's not really, it's kind of part of it. And if you've been listening to Natasha's other guests, like, yeah, that's not That's just part of it. We need to recenter your body. Your body has been rocked to the core. Your body is flooded with cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline, all these stress hormones. It's ready to jump on a dime to any type of trigger. Honey, you need to calm that body down. You need to gallop on a horse, swim through the ocean, get massages, all right? Do some ice therapy. I don't care what you do. You need to calm your nervous system down. You can't even talk positively to yourself until your nervous system's calmed down. So awareness, talking about compassion, calming your nervous system down. And then obviously the last thing, this is the salty part. This is where like we want to go back to the Pinterest reels and the IG stuff instead of like really talking with people, because that seems a hell of a lot more comfortable at 2 a.m. when you're going through a panic attack. Yeah, I know. This is where you get to talk to someone that isn't in love with your drama, isn't in love with your story of sacrifice and woe. We live in a culture where we want drama, right? We want the excitement. We want the adrenaline rush. You remember? I'm not too old when I saw Will Smith bitch slap another grown man on stage. You remember that? Yeah. And then the world did a collective, but nobody was talking about why a grown man is bitch slapping another man in the public stage. Everyone just says, oh my goodness. There's a lot unprocessed shame. He did an interview, Will Smith did an interview a few years ago with Mama. Yeah. He was reenacting the trauma going up on that stage. But everybody thought it was a viral moment. We got to connect the dots and talk with someone about what are these patterns linked to, because that's just as important as the other things. So we also need to be able to have that accountability. And here's the thing, and I think a lot of people get this messed up, and I surely did, all right, is that you're going to sit there and you're going to call your friend that's been riding or dying with you. She bailed you out of jail. She was the one who had the camera when you were throwing your husband's stuff out the door. Like all this stuff, right? She was there with you. She's the last person to talk about your trauma healing, okay? Because she might just be a mesh in your drama, your saga. So we're going to have to find somebody who ain't in love with you or your story to unpack all this stuff, that actually knows what they're talking about. And just because they say they're a certified trauma coach or a trauma-informed specialist or MD or whatever, does not mean they have the compassion, awareness, willingness to walk through all that mess with you.
So how do you find someone that has the compassion and the willingness and the awareness to do that? Like, what are signs that people should be looking for?
Well, somebody actually has gone through that. I'm grinning, right? Because like I'm sitting here now, like detached. I'm like, of course, you know, when like, and we're making a big circular reference. I mean, for me, I met so many crappy therapists. I was fired by a few therapists too, might add. Yeah, I was. I flunked out of therapy because for a couple of reasons. A, they weren't equipped. Because here's the thing, therapy is weird in the sense of they don't want you walking. They don't want you part of the story. They just want you to be able to listen and echo back and whatever. But they're not really able to be empathetic with you in the process for lots of reasons. And so it's kind of hard to muddle through the shame and the cognitive dissonance and all the funky shadow work stuff that happens in trauma healing. And so it's really hard to find someone who is aware, who is knowledgeable, and is deeply empathetic. If you're talking with someone and all they do is you're staring at your mirror and they're not saying anything back when you're like unloading your life story, that's a sign that's not a good therapist. I'm sorry. Just a hint. Just a hint.
Yeah. No, go on.
It's weird, right, Natasha? Because I know you've interviewed a lot of people. I've listened to some of those interviews, and I can just tell there's a difference between, here's my clinical definition, and I'm really amazed when I read Gabor Mate, and yes, when you're quoting all these stats and all these stuff, but where were you in the mix?
Yeah.
Not because you're trying to trauma bond, but because you're trying to build a bridge for someone to feel less othered. The thing about trauma is it makes you feel dehumanized.
Yeah. Can you expand?
And you can feel it. You can feel it in your show when you're talking with some showboat who don't even know their ass from the elbow from what pain really feels like. They may not have experienced it, but they sure can know with it, sit with it, and sit with you in the process.
So how did you go from all you experienced? Actually, before we do that, I want to ask you a question. It came up earlier in my mind. It popped into my mind. So, I mean, you experienced trauma at such a young age. So for people who have experienced that, I have this question, and it could be any kind of trauma. Like, I know from my personal experience, I didn't know any different. Like, that was my childhood. So how do you reconcile that later in life? Because did you know at the time that this is something that shouldn't be happening to you? Was there a sense, or was it just that this is life and this is normal?
This is where I'm going to be stupid and name drop myself. So I had a chance to talk to a renowned psychologist, Claudia Back. She wrote a very phenomenal book, It'll Never Happen to Me. I had a chance to
Amazing book. Yeah.
I had a chance to actually interview her for another book that she wrote, and we were talking about it, and we talked about this idea of that it's not dysfunctional if that's all you know. So it doesn't matter the fact that you came up in a situation where mom came home drunk every night. Whose mom didn't come home drunk every night, right? It's so normalized that it doesn't feel like it's abnormal until you step into other family systems and you observe, like, wait, both of your parents are sober all the time? What? Like, your dad comes home, like, and not yells at anyone? What's up with that? I remember when I was growing up, I had a best friend who was named Victoria. And I remember going over her house, and it was so surreal watching them eat dinner every night, like as a family. They're like, you need to go, Denise. We're having dinner time. Like, what are you talking about, dinner time? Everybody just ate whenever they wanted to and left everyone alone. I never grew up with dinner time, Natasha. So when I became an adult and my husband was like, let's sit down and have dinner, I'm like, what you talking about? I'm not hungry. It was a foreign idea. So part of that, like, normalization, like, oh, gosh, that was dysfunctional. There's grief into it because you don't even know what's healthy. And I think part of the healing process is recognizing that grief.
So how did you move through that grief?
It came in stages, to be honest with you. Everybody talks about the Kubler-Ross 5-stage grief thing, where the shock, the dismay, the acceptance. Like, I'm not going to go through that because that's a whole different conversation. The point I'm trying to make is that the grief is not just for someone die, right? It's a definite identity. And so you have to work through the stages of, like, acknowledging, bargaining, accepting, and then just allowing yourself to work through all those emotions. And sometimes it's not a circle where you automatically go through that. Like, sometimes you wake up and you're angry. Next time you're in denial. No, it wasn't that bad. Next day you're angry again. Next time you're trying to say, maybe I could do something differently. And allowing yourself to work through those iterations with someone that's safe, keyword, and that's done their own healing work. Because it's pointless to talk with somebody who's projecting all their own insecurities. Well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Like, what are you talking about that bad? Did you live my life? What are you talking about? You see this mess all the time. You sit there, you're trying to talk to somebody, and then they're just reflecting back all their issues and, like, I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, you're not going anywhere emotionally. And so it takes time to work through that with someone that's safe, with your journaling work, with your somatic healing work, somatic body work exercises. And I don't have a timeline. Sorry, guys. I don't. Because it depends on the intensity of the trauma, the duration of it, who was involved, their proximity to you. There's a lot of variables. I can't sit here and give you a deadline or a time frame.
So I have this, and this kind of relates to it, but I believe, everyone says, oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I believe that we do die. A part of us, that identity of who we were, had to die in order for us to heal or to, take on this new persona. So that in itself is also a grief and mourning that. But I want to talk more about how you became the woman you are today. So you are helping so many people take their pain and turn it into their superpower. And you yourself have done that as an amazing example. So what was the light bulb moment, or maybe there wasn't, maybe it was just a slow transition where you're like, I have this gift to help others?
It's funny. I was always blessed to have inconvenient interruptions in my life. I'm not going to sit here and say, one day I woke up and decided to read a Brene Brown book. Talked about vulnerability and I just healed away all my trauma. Like, it didn't work that way. I remember one day, I don't know how I got this or whatever, but I'm like in my mid-20s and I'm kind of organizing through my bookshelf. And then there was a book by Dr. Eric Byrne called Okay, You're Okay. Right? And I remember skimming through it a little bit. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I put the book down and began to have random sex with someone that I didn't know in my own home. Right? Right? It's, you know. So I'm sitting here to say that just because you read something, you'll have a eureka moment and then everything's fine. Like, that's not what happened at all. What happened was I was able to get a little inspiration that sparked an idea that caused me to have more consequences, that made me have more pain, that sparked more interest. And I was able to just read a lot more books and finally started trying to implement it. But then simultaneously, I had a bunch of other problems that came by and it was impacting me as well. And for me, I think, Natasha, what happened is I got ping pong back and forth from different type of inspirations. And at that moment, it really forced me to understand, like, okay, are you going to continue accumulating this head knowledge or are you going to do something about it? And if you're going to accumulate this head knowledge and you're doing something about it, how can you retain the information? So for me, it was receiving information, being brave enough to be vulnerable and share my story, and wanting to give back so I stay healthy.
So when you were ping-ponging between inspiration and other
Stuff. Yeah.
things,
Yes, yes.
was there more guilt then associated with the other things that you were doing because you were having these moments of inspiration?
Well, thankfully, I actually had people around me that was saying, Denise, don't do this. Denise, there's better. Maybe we can talk about this. So I didn't fall down all the way down to a depression lane to the point where I was a complete, well, I did have suicide ideation. I mean, to the point where I'm sitting here talking to you clearly, right?
So how do you take someone's pain and turn it into a power?
So everybody has their own modality or style of whatever. When I say modality, form of helping people, okay? My thing is baked on transactional analysis psychology. It's a kind of a wing of psychology that basically did a remix of Carl Jung psychology, where basically we're understanding the motives behind the actions. And so if we can get you to understand the root issue behind that, we can help to rewire your perception of present and help transform your.
So how do you get to the root of understanding why? Yeah, let's start with that.
So Dr. Eric Byrne, that I mentioned, he had a colleague called Claude Steiner. May they both rest in peace. Anyway, they wrote a book called Scripts. He wrote a book called Scripts People Live. And it basically was a rematch of all the different types of unconscious psychological games that we played that lead to very predictable outcomes. Like, for example, there's a classic game called Kick Me, where somebody basically underperforms, slacks off, procrastinates to make someone so frustrated to get them to literally kick them out, or fire them, to make them feel the ultimate outcome of, you see, I am unworthy. So everybody has a life script, good or bad. What Scripts People Live is basically understanding the life script that pertains to your life, your background, and help rewire some of those original messages to help you actually live for positive, not to live to the things that were self-destructive.
So the life script that one has, is that developed through what happens to you as a child?
So life scripts are very interesting. Life scripts, yeah, the fundamental is usually mom, dad, Uncle Jimmy, whatever, people down your street. But there's also critical junctures in your life, right? For some people, it could have been like your life can be interrupted by having a teenage pregnancy. Maybe you dropped out of college. Maybe you had to move far away. Maybe there's a lot of different scenarios. So life scripts aren't necessarily, all right, from ages to to 2 or whatever, right? I mean, yeah, 0 to 3 is like when your nervous system is like really forming the most. I usually think of it is from 0 to 25. And the reason why I say to 25 is literally when your brain stops cooking, it's all that's formatted together. And that creates your own perception of reality based on all those memories that you've experienced. I like to say it another way. I remember when I was talking with my husband, whenever we ate like pastries and stuff like that, he would always cut off the cream. I'll always cut off the cream. I said, what? It wasn't a lot of cream. Like, why are you cut off the cream? He's like, it's so fatty for you. It's bad for you. And I never even like, wait a minute, man. Like, everybody needs a little frosting into their life. Come to find out, when he was growing up as a child, his mother was cutting off the cream. He never questioned it. He just says, it's fatty for you. All of us have little scripts that make us come to general conclusions about things.
Yeah. So let's say you have a pattern that is repeating in your life. It's the same thing. It's like every time this thing happens and you feel like you're doing the work to change it, but this incident still happens. Let's say, picking bad relationships, or, financial issues, or I can't think of like some that can keep happening over and over again.
Yeah.
But then you're doing the work and you feel like you're dealing with your past and with your trauma and you're trying to overcome, but those things still happen. Is that your life script? Is that what you would say could be part of your life script?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was a book that changed my life. I've read a lot of books. I should say all books changed my life. Dr. David Appleton, he wrote a book, Fathers and Daughters. It's not on Amazon, guys. It's too old, okay? So don't bother looking at it. But anyway, in the book, it talked about the relationship dynamic between literally fathers and daughters, and the dynamic of what happens when a girl doesn't get nurtured and loved and affirmed by her dad. Well, she develops the idea that I'm unlovable. Okay, I'm unlovable. Maybe I can confirm that by dating bad boys and reactivating all the feelings of grief and turmoil. Maybe I can fix them because it reminds me of dear old dad. And if we don't come to accept that, and unfortunately nobody wants to say the quiet part of our life. Maybe dad was an asshole. Still love him, right? And going through the grief of what should have happened versus what actually happened. Unpeeling that life script is hard too. So it comes in different flavors, Natasha.
So you spoke about this as the way I would describe it. I know you use different words, but it's like it's a spiraling journey that we're continuously on. So do you feel like in your own personal healing that even though the same experience might come up or the same feeling might come up, you come from it as a different perspective because you've peeled back already some of the layers of the onion?
I say is perspective, right? Because like perspective meaning like I'm detached from it. I think it's more integration. I feel the pain. I feel how I felt, but I understand where I am now. It's not it's a both and situation where I'm sitting in it and I'm not trying to dissociate or numb myself out or try to rationalize it. That's the sweet spot.
So when you had to do that for the first time, you had to sit in the emotion. How challenging was that for you?
Well, I cried all big old ugly tears, right? Like any grown woman would do, run into a corner and cry.
It's scary to sit in the emotion. So people avoid it all the time. But what was the other side? So you sat in the emotion, there was a release, and what did you feel like on the other side of that?
Well, so everybody once says like, I cried and I felt better and I galloped a horse and I went into like happily ever ever. Like that's no, sorry. That didn't happen. What happened was I grieved. I got real angry. I went into denial. I went into bargaining. I talked about it. I grieved again. I cried. And then after a couple of iterations, I started thawing out. After a couple of iterations, I started feeling compassion for myself. After a couple more iterations, I started feeling compassion for my abuser, compassion for one's abuser. That's next level healing.
That is. So when that first came up, that you had compassion for somebody who had inflicted pain upon you, and as a child that you really had no control over it. What was your first thought when you said, okay, I can see it from their perspective?
I thought of it as freedom. For the first time, I'm no longer keeping them in the jail cell of my mind. Talking about like all the 90 ways. Like they say, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Like, vengeance is mine, says Denise. I'm going to get them. You're not going to get anyone. Matter of fact, they don't even know they hurt you because they were so dysregulated themselves. What's the point? To actually get to that point where I'm like, wait a minute. I could be sitting here ruminating around all this stuff, or I could be sitting there walking my dog or giving my son a big kiss and hug and be present with them. I chose to be present with my family. I chose to be present with myself. That superseded any form of vengeance.
That is beautiful. So Denise, for people that are feeling very inspired by you, because I think your story is amazing and it's just incredible. So what do you recommend somebody do right now? They're feeling inspired. They want to take some action. What do you recommend they do?
Okay. You giddy?
Yeah.
You're excited? You want to do something, right? You're bouncing off your toes, right? You're ready to go. So the first thing I want to ask you is, when are you going to be willing to accept the fact that life is crappy and that you're not perfect and that healing takes time? And I'm willing to feel uncomfortable. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to be able to examine your part in the dysfunction? Yes. Yeah, there is your part too. And the next thing is, who is worthy to walk your hand through the process? It don't have to be me. I don't care who you go to. But I do want you to go to someone who has compassion, understanding, and has the desire to hold you accountable to when all the guilt and the shame and all that stuff happened. Because it's normal. Our bodies, our minds, spiritually, we want to revert back to what's coming.
So for people who do want to work with you, Denise, where can they find you?
I love that. So if you want to actually work with me, right? If you love my balls to the walls approach, my website is deniseglee.com. I have over 200 posts, science-backed, psychological-backed advice on trauma, healing, addiction, burnout, all the fun stuff. Please listen, read my stuff before you even hit that let's talk about button, because how I'm talking to you is pretty much how I'm talking to you in the real world. And so I want you to feel safe with that. I'm not for everybody.
That's amazing. And you are for some people, and you have such a direct approach, which I love. I'm South African. I'm super direct. So I love that. But you have a lightheartedness, and you bring in like just the authentic, real truth that healing is hard, but in such a lighthearted way.
Well, thank you. Because I just don't give a damn anymore. That's part of my authenticity. That's my superpower. I don't give a damn anymore. Because in order for me to stay safe, sane, and sober, I can't put on a ruse. I can't.
I think that's so hard for people. I think that's I know that's also been part of me and my journey, is that I got to a point where I'm too tired to play the part that I was supposed to and not be myself.
There's a wonderful song. I wish I could play it, but for copyright reasons, obviously we can't. But there was a song from Fantasia called Free Yourself. And it was basically a song about a man. They're in a relationship and she's like, if you're not happy with me, please go somewhere, go do something, right? I think for a lot of us, we need to free ourselves from the imprisonment of what we think other people think about us, or our healing journey, or what's to be expected. Free yourself.
Yeah. That's beautiful. An amazing way to end. Thank you so much, Denise. This has been a pleasure talking to you, and like a hydrant of information that you have shared with us today, and incredible to think about where you were and where you are today. So thank you.